Hi, I'm Judy Ryder and want to welcome you to Joe's Test Studio. I'm going to show you in the next few minutes some different ways to mask whites. One thing that watercolor artists love to do is save whites. Now often we paint around the whites, but sometimes we would like to have a really crisp edge, or we would really like to have some small areas that it's just really hard to save the whites. So we've got some great tools and products to use to do that. So I thought it would be interesting to do just a little mini demonstration of how I might do a ocean and masking out the horizon line, and then also a little rocky shoreline with some indications of some waves using these products. Now the first thing I'm going to do is establish my horizon line. Now if I had a big piece of paper and I wanted to use a masking product to keep that crisp edge on the horizon line, I'd probably use masking tape. But this little artist tape for curves makes a nice little way to save a really small edge. It would be good for if you're doing boats and you need rigging on boats and so forth. And you can manipulate it in many ways, but since this is a small demo about a beach scene, we'll just use this to mark where our horizon line is. And the idea behind this is that anything underneath it is going to stay dry, and therefore when you paint over it or paint through it, it's not going to creep under the product. So that's an easy way to just establish horizon line. Now in the front area, I was interested in maybe doing a little rocky shore. So I thought it would be fun to just put a little masking tape on that, if I can find the edge of it. And sometimes I even take this paint and I'll peel it in half to get a sort of a rough edge as well. I won't take the time to do that, but you can just sort of tear it in various ways and then turn the ragged edge to the outside. But just for our purposes, I'm just going to put a little indication of what maybe a rocky area here in front. And then the area in between will be the beach, the water, the surf, and so forth. Let me go all the way over to the edge here. Okay. Now another product that I love to use to save whites is Pebeo drawing gum. There's all different kinds of masking fluid out there, and I've tried it all, and all of it's very good. But I really love the Pebeo gum. I like the texture of it. It's not real heavy. It seems to work well for me. When you're using masking fluids of any kind though, the one thing you need to remember is don't use your good brushes. Use a synthetic brush like this. Now obviously I've used this for painting too, but just a simple synthetic small round brush would work. And clean it, or wet it, and then you need to roll it in soap. Now this is just a little bar of soap I got from a hotel somewhere, or a little piece of soap from your shower that you're going to throw anyway. But you need to roll your brush in the soap before you use the drawing gum, because it kind of acts like a rubber cement, and if it stays in your brush too long, it's going to dry and harden, and then you've ruined your brush. When I use the drawing gum, I don't dip right into the bottle. I pour a little bit out into the cap, like a top of a water or a Coca-Cola cap, or top of a wine bottle or something like that. I just pour a little bit out, and it really goes a long way, so you don't need to put much out. And then I always make sure I put the lid back onto the jar, because the air is what dries it out. So just keep that in mind when you're doing it. So I've wet my brush, I've rolled it in the soap, and now I'm going to dip it into the drawing gum. And I'm going to do this to make the top edges of some of the surf that's coming in. And these will be some of the bigger ones maybe that you see. We've got different sizes, and I'm going to use another masking pen for some of the smaller ones. But I just think about how a wave maybe would roll, or what kind of a shape it would create that I would want to leave white. And I'll put those of various areas across the painting or across the paper, and certainly, you know, make them different sizes and lengths as you go along. You don't want them to all look exactly the same. So that's the drawing gum, and you can continue on with that. You can use that on flower petals, you can use it on limbs of trees, all different kinds of things. Anytime you want to save a white that you're not going to be able to paint around. And always make sure you wash your brush out. Okay, now another handy way to do the masking for little areas like this is it's called masking fluid, a mask pen masking fluid. And it comes in a little bottle like this, and it has a little needle at the top. You pull the needle out, and then you can draw with it actually. So I could you know, write my name if I wanted to, or do any kind of doodle, or just any kind of calligraphy kind of lines. But if I decided I wanted some little fine lines for right along the water's edge here maybe, or just smaller areas of surf, you can use this. Now most of the time when you tilt it down, the product is going to rush to the tip. So almost always you get like a little blob right at the very beginning. So you have to learn to expect that. And sometimes I'll start it over here on the side before I actually put it you know, on the product itself, on the paper itself. So you can see this gives you a finer line. You can control that a little more. And I'm just sort of turning it almost sideways just to get that little fine line that I want. And you know, you don't want to completely do everything in white. That would sort of defeat the purpose. But this just kind of gives you a little wiggle room when you're putting on those nice big washes and you want to save a little white. Now if for some reason you've got it on there, you have to let it dry before you add paint to it. If you don't like it, you can remove it. And I'll show you, in this one, I'll just show you real quick an easy way to remove it. You can use your finger, but sometimes we have lotion or, you know, just oil from our skin on our fingers. But you can just rub it off with your finger. But what I like to use is called a rubber cement pickup. And actually, that's what it's called, and that's what it's for. And you can just lift that right off the paper, and there's no damage to the paper, and you can start over or change it any way you want to. It's easy to get carried away using masking fluid, and so a lot of times I will put things on paintings, and then after I'm done, with putting it on there, I realize I've way overdone it with the masking fluid. So I'll let it dry, and I'll come back and I'll lift some of it because I can, you know, paint around some things. Okay, I'm going to set this aside. Now this one was done earlier, and just to show you how once you get the masking fluid on there and it's dry, and this has been dry for a couple of days, then you can actually paint right over it. You don't have to worry about saving those whites. So we'll do a little quick demo here, and I'll show you how that works. Okay. All right, now I'm going to start with the sky. And you know, the sky in this painting is not that big of a deal. So it's not, I'm not going to worry about clouds, I'm not going to worry about the sun setting. You know, I'm just going to do a sort of a basic sweeping wash here all the way down to that horizon line, and actually I'm going to come right down into the water. Okay, and you can see how that tape resists that paint. Now just for a little variety here, I am going to just do a little lifting. Now I'm going to keep going right on down into the water. I'm going to put out some more darker paint. I want to get some really rich colors back there by that horizon line, so when I pull that paint off, pull that tape off, I'll have a nice crisp edge back there. And I'm just painting right over that masking fluid, the masking pen. And I can just put all kinds of paint on there. and not have to worry about losing those whites. Now I get a little closer to the shore, and I want to change colors just a bit. Overlap that just a little and fade it out somewhat. Make it look more like it's intermixed with the shoreline there. Put a little bit of the sand color in there. Don't want green sand, but we might have to have it there a little bit. And then where I have this masking tape, I can go right up to the edge of that. And then that's going to give me a nice crisp edge for rocks when I paint it. I can go right over to that paint. I don't even have to worry about stopping at the edge. Okay. Now at this point I would stop, because what I would do is I would let that dry, and then I would come back and probably remove this tape before I did the rocks. Now I dried this with a hairdryer. I try to be very careful when I have masking fluid on my artwork, and I've got and I'm using a hairdryer, and I try really hard not to put the hairdryer really close. I'm thinking the heat will probably maybe do something to it, and it won't. Sometimes it maybe won't come off. So you may want to be careful about that and just let it dry naturally. But it is dry enough for me to remove the tape. So I just wanted to show you right here where you have the detailing tape right here. You can see you've got that nice white line, and you say, well, that's just way too stark for me. You know, it's too much. It's too much white. So you can always come back in on that part and just lose an edge and add a little more paint. That way you can save the white that you want, but you can also vary it a little bit. And then as you come forward, then you can add extra paint to the ocean as well. So you can vary that however you would like to, but just leave that nice white edge. A lot of times I'll leave it till the very end, even though I know I'm probably going to have to adjust it. But doggone it, once you lose a white, sometimes you can't get it back. So a lot of times it's better just to leave it till the very end. Okay, now I'm going to take the tape off the front here, because I want to just show you what kind of an edge you can get with the masking tape on the edge of like a rocky cliff or shore or something. And then we'll put a little color on the rocks, so you'll see how that kind of all works. It really makes a nice contrast, which can be, like I said, adjusted later on. And really, if you wanted to, you could even continue the shoreline up here and put some birds and things like that if you wanted to mask it out for that reason and then soften some of the edges. But since it has this nice sort of a ragged edge here because I tore the tape, we'll just put a sort of a rock, like we'll pretend like we're in Ireland, and we'll put a big rock up here. I'm going to leave some of that edge showing. In a place or two, I don't mind if it touches some of the other paint, but this way it just kind of gives you the idea that maybe the sun is on the top of the rock, or maybe there's a different facet of it that you want to depict, maybe more than one plane. Do that real quick. This would also be another reason to use some of your texturing materials here. You can use, you could put salt in it. You could actually do the Kleenex or some of the other texturing tools that we use to add a little variation and a little detail to these rocks right here in the front. just soften just a little edge right up here in a place or two. Okay, now just for fun, I'm just going to put a little texture there with my hand, just to kind of show you what else you can do if you want to. And we'll blot it a little bit here and there, make it look like it has a lot of little things going on there. Okay, now I'm going to just real quickly see if I can remove some of this masking fluid. Rubber cement pickup, hold your paper down, make sure it's dry. That's the main thing, it has to be dry. If it isn't dry, sometimes you'll end up tearing your paper, or the paper will come up with it. So that's the main key. Okay, now, let's see, there's a little bit more right here. Always, when I'm done, or when I think I'm done, always just sort of run my finger over it, because inevitably you will end up forgetting a little piece of it. Okay, then you can soften. Put a little glaze of color here and there to just kind of make it look like it's more really wet. Okay. Add a little dark here and there, and maybe a little lifting here in the front, make it look like it's some surf's coming up. Kind of spraying. And there you go. That's it.